Sorry we're running a little late this morning. We had a couple technical difficulties. So great to be here this morning. Happy New Year to everybody, and welcome to our first Neighborhood Services Virtual HOA Academy for 2025. Hi, everybody. I'm going to give just a few seconds for attendees to enter the Zoom and to get settled here. And just in preparation for today, I see a lot of familiar names joining our session today and some new names too. So nice to meet all of you who are joining us maybe for the first time today. It's great to be here today and to kick off our 2025 Virtual HOA Academy for the different neighborhood services from around the Valley. Welcome to our first class for 2025, and we teach these classes in partnership with the cities of Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, and Tempe. So I'd like to give a little shout out for all those different neighborhood services departments because they are very active in promoting free education for board members, homeowners, and managers. So kudos to all those different cities for partnering with our firm to create this free educational opportunity every month in 2025. My name is Beth Mulcahy, for those of you who may not have joined us before or who this might be your first time meeting me. And I'm the founder and senior partner for the Mulcahy Law Firm in Phoenix, Arizona. As you may know, I've represented HOAs and condominiums in the state of Arizona for over 28 years. My firm currently represents over 1,000 planned communities, HOAs, and condominium associations throughout the state of Arizona. I'm also currently serving on my HOA board, actually two boards, a master and a sub board, and I have been doing that for many years. So I think I bring a pretty unique perspective to working with HOAs and condominiums and teaching these classes, because not only am I an attorney who has represented associations for many, many years, over 28 years, but I've also served on my board for 14 years as well. So I know the challenges of serving on a board. And let's not also forget that when I wasn't on my board, at times I was a disgruntled owner. So I have a lot of different perspectives as I teach these classes. Okay, first, Happy New Year to everybody. I wish you and your association a wonderful and prosperous and, a year of getting things done in your communities. I can't believe it's been nearly 5 years now since our first virtual class during the pandemic. This virtual platform continues to be a success and allows for us to reach many people than we've ever reached before in one setting. And I can just see right now we have 142 people with us here today on Zoom. And we also have many others joining us on Facebook Live today. Thank you again for joining us today for our first class of 2025. We understand that serving on an association board can be challenging and sometimes stressful. It's also stressful for the management companies and the management industry because of the many challenges and the fast pace of working with HOA boards and condominium boards. We also know how frustrating it can be to live in an association and feel that your board may not be living up to their fiduciary responsibilities or following the law. That's why we're here to support all of you with free seminars, including a dedicated Q&A answer in every class that we teach. For those of you who may be familiar with these classes, we're going to go through our presentation in about an hour of time. And then at the end, we always save questions for the end. And I answer every question that's submitted to our firm before we log off of this seminar. And so we have a great lineup of classes, just so you know, that are, we have posted on our website for the first half of 2025. We put a lot of thought into the content that we're teaching so that we can provide cutting edge information to help you better run your associations in compliance with state and federal laws. Okay, let's see. So we're going to get into our poll now with the audience. Our first poll that we're going to be submitting to you, it's really helpful if we can try to get as many people participating so that I know who the audience is today. So the first question is, in which city do you reside? And we have all the different cities listed that we are teaching these classes with. And then our second poll question is, let us know your current role. Are you a board member, a manager, or are you an interested homeowner? And so we're going to try to get as many people as possible. Looks like we've got 78, 79, 80, more than half of you have responded. Keep responding because it's really important for us to get as many of you responding so that I know what our audience is today and I can best tailor the class. So it looks like, we got to get to 100. We're at 97, 98, almost there. Okay, while we're waiting for the poll results to come in, let's talk a little bit about, what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to kick off the new year today with a look at the hottest topics pertaining to associations in Arizona. We're going to talk a little bit about the legislative preview for 2025. We're going to talk a little bit about the Corporate Transparency Act, which is a very hot topic right now. We're going to talk about public roadways deadline that's going to be coming up, and insurance rates increases, which I think we all were watching in horror over the past few weeks with the California fires. And I think we're all starting to get our renewals on our insurance and we're seeing increases. So we want to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about aging buildings and reserve funds. How do we come up with a capital improvement plan or a master plan to help, bring our association into 2025 so we don't have so many maintenance issues. We're going to talk a little bit about electric cars. And we're also going to talk about how to recruit new board members. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about goal setting for associations and provide you with some tips for how you can accomplish these goals in 2025. So we have a great class planned for today, lots of different hot topics. And before we do that, I'm going to go right into our poll results. So another great turnout from all the different cities that, are participating with us and teaching these classes. So 70% of you who are here today, out of 147, have responded to our poll, and we have every city represented. So Avondale, 1%, Chandler, 13%, Glendale, 4%, Goodyear, 3%, Mesa, 23%. Great job, Mesa. Phoenix, Peoria, 9%, Phoenix, 15%, Scottsdale, 17%, Surprise, 7%, and Tempe, 10%. So great turnout. Every single city is represented here today, which is amazing. Okay, let's switch gears now and talk about who's here today in terms of our attendance. So we have 69% of you are board members, 7% are managers, and 19% are interested homeowners, and other is 5%. Okay, so great turnout of board heavy today in terms of our audience, but really great to have a couple managers with us here today, and also to have interested homeowners. So welcome everybody. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the legislature. So our Arizona legislature is a seasonal legislature for those of you who may not be aware of this. And so what that means is we're not in session in Arizona, our legislature, 12 months of the year. Typically what happens is the legislature for the 2025 legislature opens in January of 2025. And, they'll work through typically, it's May or June at the latest, to get all the bills passed that they need to get passed this year. And probably the most important item on their agenda is going to be the budget for the state of Arizona. And so kind of how this works is right now we're in the bills being introduced stage. And so right now we're just watching all the bills that are being introduced. There's not a lot of committee activity just yet. And we're just starting to put together a summary of the different bills pertaining to associations, and we're going to be getting those on our website probably by next week. And so typically by now we'll see maybe 10 or 20 bills that pertain to associations, and they will summarize these bills and let you know what the legislature is planning to do to further regulate associations in Arizona. And this could be planned communities or condominiums. We're still reviewing the list of bills and working on preparing an easy to understand general overview. We will have that posted by next week so that you can start to see a summary of the bills that have been introduced to date. A couple of pointers on this. While the legislature is in session, we will be updating the bill summary about every week. And we'll be talking about the different bills that are being introduced in the legislature each time I log on with you. I'll be saying, hey, if there's anything, that I think is problematic or anything that I think is good, we'll be talking about it and what's likely to pass this year, etc. Okay, so a couple bills that we are already watching, that are listed here. I'm not going to go into them in depth because there are a lot of bills here, but just to give you a quick summary of what the different topics are. One is on recording meetings, and the board has to keep a copy of the recording for 6 months. We've got a bill on amendments to CC&Rs, and it would change the threshold of the affirmative vote to amend a declaration. We've got a bill on records requests for associations. We have a bill on virtual meetings and proxies. Really, there's just a whole gamut of bills. Right now, there's, probably 10 or 11 bills that we're going to be closely monitoring as we go forward. And so let's move on now to our hot topics that we're going to be discussing today, but that's just a quick little overview. We will have those posted. I already have a summary going by early next week. Okay, let's move on now to our hot topics for today. The Corporate Transparency Act is unfortunately, a persistent hot topic, and we are closely monitoring what's going on with the Corporate Transparency Act. For those of you who may not be familiar with it, it's a federal law that associations in Arizona need to comply with. And basically, it's kind of strange that this law even applies to us. It's an anti-terrorism and money laundering law, and it was passed so that our government could obtain information about corporations that are, doing business in the United States. And unfortunately, HOAs and condominiums were listed as corporations that were going to be subject to this Corporate Transparency Act. And so initially the law was passed and everybody needed to comply by January 1st, 2025 by submitting information about your board members. So the information would be like their name, identification, a copy of an identification, and your social security number, information like that. Many boards were upset about this because they felt it was, an intrusion of their privacy. They're serving on a nonprofit volunteer board, and they didn't think that, it was appropriate that they had to share this information. And I think kind of widespread it was people in our industry are upset about it, myself included. I'm on my boards. Remember, I have to disclose 2 times for the 2 different boards I'm on, and then also for my law firm and a few other LLCs that I'm involved in. But the bottom line is it's the law. We have to comply with it. Well, it's been kind of an exciting December with regard to this law because we all needed to get our paperwork in by January 1st. And what happened is in early December, a federal judge there's been a bunch of cases that have been, challenges to this new law. And in December, there was a case in the Eastern District of Texas where they issued a nationwide injunction to halt the CTA. So to halt everybody having to comply with the CTA. So December 3rd, all this stuff was due by January 1st, 2025. A court in Texas says nobody has to comply with this. We're putting a stay on having to comply with this. Boomerang, December 5th, the government appeals this ruling in the United States Court of Appeals for the 5th Circuit. And, basically what happens is the 5th Court of Appeals on December 23rd grants a stay, so reinstates the original filing deadline for the CTA. So if you don't have whiplash yet, you should have it by now, okay, right? So basically, just to break this down kind of easy, this law was passed. We had to comply with it by January 1st, 2025. A federal court in Texas said, no, you don't have to comply with it on December 3rd. On December 23rd, that same court reverses itself and says that the stay is lifted and you do have to comply by January 1st, 2025. Well, the government decides on late December 23rd, we're going to extend the deadline and give people now until January 13th because of all this commotion. Well, then boomerang right back, December 26th, a different panel of the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals decides that the stay should go back in place. And so right now we're kind of in a holding pattern. On January, 3rd, 2025. This case went to the Supreme Court of the United States, which is kind of exciting for our industry. And Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, who is assigned to handle matters for the Fifth Circuit, requested that the respondents and plaintiffs submit their response to the government's application for a stay by January 10th, 2025. That did occur. And now we're just waiting to see what's going to happen with the Supreme Court. So honestly, I don't know what's going to happen on this. We'll just have to wait and see. Basically, the main issue that's at the Supreme Court right now is whether, people should be forced to file this again and the stay should be lifted while the court case is being decided. And typically, on something like this, whatever the Supreme Court does is probably some telegraphing in terms of what's going to happen on the lawsuit. So if they say, once they read all the briefs and make a determination, if they say, no, the nationwide stay should be lifted and people need to file this, it's kind of a warning sign, in my opinion, that this will not be deemed unconstitutional and we're going to have to live with this going forward. So we will keep you posted. If anything big happens on this, I promise you, we'll be talking about it on our Facebook account, our Instagram account, in these classes, and it will be posted on our website. So stay tuned. We'll keep you posted on the Corporate Transparency Act. Just so you know, our firm's recommendation has been just continue to be prepared. We actually ended up filing a lot of the ones that were already in process. Even though the court kept flip-flopping on this over the holidays. So if you haven't yet filed it, what we would really recommend is be prepared. Have your report ready to file in case the Supreme Court reverses itself. I think that the government will give us, a longer period to respond. And so I think that is something that if they do reverse themselves, I do think that is something that will happen. And so just stay tuned. We'll keep you posted as, developments happen on this. If anybody has any questions on this, please be sure to reach back out to us and, we'll answer them today before we sign off today. Okay, so let's switch gears now and talk a little bit about public roadways in a planned community. So some of you may already be aware of this law, but basically in 2023, the Arizona State Legislature passed a bill. It was House Bill 2298, which amends Arizona Revised Statutes 33-1818. And this bill only applies to planned communities with public roadways. And so basically, the one thing that people get confused about is you have to first determine whether or not this law applies to you before you can, go to the next step and figure out, what do we do to comply with it. So I think just as a starting point, I think most of us can agree that on-street parking in associations is a difficult topic. Why? Because it's hard to catch people parking, at night. And, the board members aren't out there patrolling the streets. So, and it's difficult for the management company to be there as well because they have probably many properties and the managers, typically aren't paid to, be out canvassing the neighborhood at midnight or whenever, all of these different parking violations are occurring. And so to add, kind of insult to this is that, parking, some associations have public streets that are in their associations. So, and some associations don't. Some associations have they're guard gated and they own their streets. And so if it's a public street, sometimes we get pushback from people, hey, this is a public street, how can the HOA enforce parking on it? And it can be done because the CC&Rs are a contract between the owner and the association. And they're subject to that contract and they have to comply. If the contract says you can't park overnight on the street, then they can't do it. And their guests also cannot do it. So just as a starting point on this law, for this law to apply to you, you have to be a planned community, number one. And then number two, you would have to be a planned community that's no longer under declarant control. That will be controlling your board. And your CCNRs were originally recorded before January 1st, 2015. And that's probably many associations here. And then your CCNRs include on-street parking regulations. And then last but not least, the roadways within the community are public roadways or dedicated to the public. So there's a lot of things that have to happen before this law applies to you. So planned community, not under declarant control anymore. CCNRs were recorded before January 1st, 2015. The CCNRs include on-street parking regulations, and the roadways within the community are public. Okay, if you meet all four of those requirements, your on-street parking regulations will remain in effect until either of the following occurs. So no later than June 30th, 2025, the planned community has to call a meeting of the membership on the question of whether to continue to regulate the public roadways. If a quorum of the membership is met and a majority of the owners voting at that meeting vote to continue regulating public roadways in the planned community, the planned community keeps their right to regulate these public roadways. And then the board of directors, after that vote, has to record in the office of the county recorder of the county in which the planned community is located a document confirming that the planned community will continue to regulate the public roadways. Now, that's if the vote passes. If the vote does not fail, or if the planned community doesn't hold a vote by June 30th, 2025, the planned community no longer has the authority to regulate the public roadways in the planned community. And any existing regulations that you would have in your CCNRs related to parking, on-street parking, those will expire, on July 1st, 2025. So if that happens, if the plan, then there's no authority over the public roadways for, the planned communities that have public streets that don't get the vote that they need or don't conduct the vote at all. That won't be able to be enforced after that. So my team has heard a lot of questions and, feedback from boards and management companies and associations regarding this legislation. We've heard some associations comment to us that they are hesitant to go through the process of holding the vote because they don't actively enforce the CCNR parking restrictions right now on the public streets. But on the flip side, others are eager to do so in order to preserve their right to enforce the parking restrictions if it becomes an issue down the line. So if your association falls under these categories and on-street parking is an issue on your public streets adjacent to your association or within your association, it is our recommendation to go ahead and hold the vote, regardless of whether you're currently enforcing it or not. We've helped a lot of planned communities navigate this new law from the beginning, starting with just reviewing their documents to see if this law applies to them. We also help them draft the ballot and prepare for the vote, help them count the votes, and attend the meeting if the board would like us to do that. So if your association falls in this category and you'd like our help, please reach out to us. We can point you in the right direction or strategize with you about the best way to handle this. But remember, timeliness is really important on this because this new law, all the meeting, if you're going to have a meeting, needs to take place, well before June 30th, 2025. And so really at the absolute latest, you should be, contacting us by March 1st at the absolute latest if your association wants to get a vote of your membership on this, because we have to give notice of the meeting at least 10 days, not less than 10, not more than 50. We have to prepare ballots. We have to actually conduct a meeting. And then if it passes, we need to record the document. So I think to be safe, the latest you should wait is until March 1st. And even then we're going to have to really hustle. So the sooner you can do it, the better. Okay, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about insurance rate increases. This is a huge problem. We're getting a lot of calls from clients about this. We have a great cheat sheet on insurance, and we're going to be sharing that with you now. We also have an article that was written by the Community Associations Institute on navigating the insurance crisis challenges and solutions for associations in 2025. Both of those are really valuable resources if you want to do a deep dive on this topic. CAI's recent article discusses the ongoing insurance crisis facing community associations. And just to kind of simplify that for you, I mean, I think the crisis is that either associations are being outright canceled and they're not being offered, a renewal on their insurance that they're required to have for their association, or the premiums are going up so high that the associations cannot, they can't do it anymore. They can't carry that insurance at that rate. And we're seeing mostly, condominiums are contacting us, and housing cooperatives are contacting us right now with this problem. We've seen increases in planned communities, but not to the point that it's not feasible for the association, the planned community to pay the premium. And so, kind of the current challenges as we, can see them right now are that we're seeing rising insurance premiums, policy cancellations, and we're having to increase deductibles to make the premium payment work. Insurance costs have skyrocketed, with some associations facing premium increases that have doubled or tripled. We're seeing a lot of natural disasters in our country right now. Inflation, supply chain disruptions, rising construction costs, fires, hurricanes, and all of this contributing to these different problems with the insurance companies. And we're noticing that insurance companies are being more cautious, often canceling policies or refusing to renew them, especially in areas where it's prone to extreme weather events. I know many years ago, well, not many, but like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we had a lot of insurance claims for hailstorms. And all of this in Arizona, and all of this is, coming to a head right now. Okay, so how does this impact associations? We think that we're getting a lot of calls from boards saying, what do we do? And so you're struggling to find affordable and comprehensive coverage that you're required to have under your documents. Many associations are now being forced to accept policies with higher deductibles, reduced limits, or exclusions for critical perils. These limitations are starting to affect, the finances of the association and causing increases in assessments. And remember, associations have to comply with the insurance coverage requirements set by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which has become, increasingly difficult. But most importantly, you need to comply with the insurance requirements in your CC&Rs. Okay, I know that CAI is advocating for a lot of reforms to address these challenges, but a lot of these are kind of, I'm not sure are immediately going to be able to help our associations, but they're asking for insurance reforms, risk mitigation programs to incentivize associations to invest in infrastructure improvements to reduce risk exposure. They've been talking with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the federal lending agencies, to review and potentially revise required insurance coverage requirements. And they've been promoting access to fair plans so that you can get insurance at a reasonable rate. Okay, some suggestions for associations that are facing insurance problems. First, reach out to our firm. We can take a look at your CC&Rs, determine what coverage you have to have under your CC&Rs or under state law. We can look at what policy you have. We can, give you advice on, potentially what companies might be writing policies that can give you a lower rate. I know there was one company in particular. Well, a lot of our clients were being canceled by a certain company, insurance company, or two actually, certain insurance companies. And we've been doing a lot of research to find some higher risk companies. And one in particular has a very good rating and is writing premiums that are very similar to, what we saw 2-3 years ago. So we'd be happy to share that name with you if you're in the market for insurance and you're struggling to find insurance, or if the rate is too high. Another alternative is we may need to look at how to amend your CC&Rs so that, you can shift the burden of the insurance coverage to the owners, because they might individually be able to get better coverage and it might cost less. So we're advising a lot of associations on how to navigate this difficult insurance crisis right now. And reach out to us if you're struggling with this or having problems, because we can definitely point you in the right direction. Let's talk next about reserve funds. And we have a great cheat sheet, just so you know, on reserves, which you can find on our website, mulcahylawfirm.com. For those of you who might not be familiar with our website, just so you know, it has a lot of great information pertaining to associations. Our popular cheat sheets, we have about 65 cheat sheets on different topics. I know we just shared one on insurance with you in this program. We also, like I said, have a great one on reserve funds. And so I would encourage you to take a look at it. So reserve funds are a hot topic this year because it's really your long-term planning tool for your association so that you don't have large special assessments to fix things to fix the pool that needs to be resurfaced or to have the tennis courts be resurfaced, or, there's a ton of issues that are capital improvement type issues. And what the reserve is, it's basically, it's a savings account that you establish for long-term expenditures. And you hire our best advice, best practices would be for an association to hire a reserve company reserve companies have a special license, and they have special training to create reserve analysis studies. And basically what they do is they come out to your property, they look at all your amenities, they look at your CC&Rs to see what you're required to maintain. And then they come up with a plan for you, a 30-year plan on how much money you should be collecting every year, so that when a particular capital improvement item fails or needs to be replaced, you have the money in the reserve and you don't have to do a special assessment. So there are a lot of positive reasons for establishing a reserve fund. Here are the most common reasons. Reserve funding meets legal, fiduciary, and professional requirements. Although it's not the law in Arizona to have a reserve fund, it may be required in your CC&Rs. And of course, it's best practices to do long-term planning. A reserve fund plans for the planned replacement of major items. And so it gives the board a tool or a guide or a map for how much money you should have in the reserve. And really one of the great things about a reserve study is that it'll take whatever money you have right now in January 2025, that'll be your starting point on the reserve study. So let's say you have 150,000 in reserves, then they'll use that number and put it into a formula to show you, after looking at all of your amenities and different capital improvements that need to be improved. And it will give you a formula over 30 years of how much you need to put in each year based upon the useful life of the items. It's an amazing tool for boards, and it's very helpful. So that reserve study is going to help you fund the reserve. And another benefit of the reserve fund is it kind of distributes the payment, of fixing things and replacing things among, old and new owners. So it's not like, a new owner moves in and bam, they're going to get a $50,000 special assessment, right? This is something that's built up over time, and it's a more equitable way to pay for long-term capital expenses. Also, I mentioned this a little bit before, a reserve fund minimizes or negates the need for special assessments. And it's just a great planning tool so that your association, doesn't defer maintenance or get into financial difficulties. It's a savings account so that it's for a rainy day, so that when the item fails or needs to be replaced, you have the money right there to do it. And for more information on this, please definitely check out our cheat sheet on reserve funds. And I believe we might be sharing it with you, or you can find it on our website at mulcahylawfirm.com. A little bit about electric vehicles, our next hot topic here today. Currently, Arizona law does not address how community associations should regulate electronic vehicle parking, EV parking, and charging stations. And really right now, only 13 states in the United States do this. Every community association, whether you're an HOA or a condominium, handles parking differently. But it's important for associations to think ahead and anticipate challenges or questions with EV charging stations if you haven't already. I know my association right now, we're kind of struggling with it because some owners want to require the association to pay for EV charging stations in the common areas of our association. But unfortunately, we don't have that as something in our reserve fund, that we're going to be adding that, the next time we do our reserve study, which, by the way, you should probably be doing reserve studies about every 3 to 5 years, especially with the inflation over the past few years. Really important to get that updated, probably every 3 to 5 years. Okay, so, for associations that own or assign parking spaces, you may need to consider and evaluate which spaces could be EV charger friendly. If only some spaces are, you may end up needing to reassign spots. If they aren't assigned through a deed, there's lots of considerations for these EV charging stations, right? In a planned community, typically the owners are going to just have it in their garage or adjacent to their house. So most planned communities, in my experience, aren't getting a lot of requests from homeowners to put them on their common areas. Some developers are doing this automatically, but most aren't, because in a planned community, people just have the charging station, built right in their garage or adjacent to their house. Where this is really coming to fruition is in townhomes and in condominiums, where their limited common elements is where spaces are, and they're subsidized on car, and they want to have a charging station either in their designated spot, or they're asking the community to create a charging station on the common areas so that everybody can use it. There's a lot of different issues. If you have an owner, who wants to install one in their parking spot, what I recommend is that you have them submit like an architectural change form and explain how that will work, and where they're going to get their electricity from. And want to make sure some considerations that we have would be who's paying for the electricity. Obviously, this should be separately metered for the owner so that they're paying for that charge themselves. Also, aesthetics. I've had a couple questions from associations where we have an owner that wants to put in like a kind of an outdated, ugly system, and everybody can see it, and they're concerned about that. So that's a consideration as well. Sometimes the owners want the association to pay for this, and there's only 5 owners that have an electric car, and maybe there's 75 owners in the community. And, it's just not feasible for associations to pay for this because it only affects few people. Some kind of creative solutions is to think about, if you're in this situation, would be to install a charging station that the owners pay as they go. So there are companies that are doing that. If you have a situation like that and you want some advice, please reach out to our firm and we can get you in touch with them. Basically, they install it on a common area parking spot, and any owner that wishes to use it, they pay or swipe with their credit card to get the electricity to charge their vehicle, and it's a transaction, between the owner and the company that provides the electricity. Other owners can park there, so it's not like we're designating this as only an EV station, especially if you have limited parking. That can be a real issue. But I think kind of the key thing to think about on this issue is that, it's something that it's not going to go away. And you will be getting requests on this, especially if you're a condominium or a townhome. And you might want to kind of pre-think it. And if you do get an owner that's pretty fired up about doing this, definitely reach out to your legal counsel to get advice on the best way to handle it. Okay, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about preventing burnout and recruitment of board members. One of the common questions that I get as an attorney that practices in this area is, hey, we don't have enough people who are willing to run for the board. And we have vacancies, and we put out a communication to our members saying, hey, if you're interested in running for the board, please submit a application or a biography. And it's crickets. Nobody responds. And so, that's kind of 2 issues here. Like, anybody who's currently serving on a board, myself included, understands the burnout that goes with being on the board. On the flip side of that, when it's time for you to move on to greener pastures, then you can't find anybody to run for the board. And, so it's difficult to recruit anybody to take your spot. You start to feel a little bit like, hey, this is turning into like a life sentence on the board, which I don't want. And so, here, what are some strategies, to kind of counter this and to make sure that your association doesn't get into that particular situation. So, if you've attended our seminars in the past, you know that I've been very candid about the fact that there's a lot of benefits and rewards of serving on a board. I personally really enjoy walking around my neighborhood and seeing all the different things that I feel I've been instrumental in helping be improved or better maintained or, replaced in a very professional manner. But there's also a ton of hassles serving on the board. Okay, let's be real here. We all know that. I would be lying if I didn't say I have thought about quitting my board at least, a few times in 2024. It hasn't started yet, but we haven't had a first meeting yet in January. So, it's a tough job because, it takes a lot of time, and it's frustrating sometimes because things aren't moving as fast as I would like them to be moving in my association. And then you get all the complaints from people that, are owners in your association and that are unhappy about things and want you to fix it. So it's the type of job that it's good and it's bad, right? So we can all agree. So what are some strategies first to prevent burnout? I think probably the first thing that I would say is, um, you know, if you're feeling burned out as a board member, typically the people that are getting burned out are like the officers, like the president and the treasurer, in my experience, are the ones that have probably the most responsibilities. Just recognize that you don't have to be president forever. You can have somebody else on your board step in for the next year and you just be a director at large. I did that at my association. I was the president of our master association, and it was the longest year of my life, frankly. It was a very hard year in terms of there were a lot of problems, unfortunately, in our community that we needed to solve, and it was a tiring year. And so I dialed it back the next year. Instead of just quitting the board, what I did is I dialed it back and I just became a board member at large. And I have been a board member at large now for 8 years. And that's honestly a lot better fit for me right now based upon my work schedule and the fact that I have teenagers. But so kind of what ways to prevent the burnout would be, just not quitting altogether, but maybe just saying, hey, this year I'm going to take a role as just like a director at large. Or, spreading the work around a little more between your board. I think you'll notice that there's always kind of some people that are doers on a board, and then there's some people that just sit back and let the other people do the work. Try to find out what the people who maybe aren't contributing as much, find out if they want to contribute more and what special skills they may have to kind of spread the burden around. Another thing is you have to have a good management company. That alone and burnout for board members if you're working with a management company and they're not performing. And now the board is picking up all the slack. That's very frustrating. And that can create burnout for sure because you're micromanaging the management company and then you're picking up all the slack on the things that they're not doing. And sometimes I find that board members just stop even using the management company. I mean, the management company is getting paid every month, but the board's just doing everything, which kind of doesn't make sense. So some ways to prevent burnout would, another way would be make sure that you have a really great support team that's supporting you. And that starts with your management company, your attorney, your CPA, your insurance agent. You want to surround yourself with the best possible people so that they take the burden off of you. And I frequently say that to clients when they come to me with a problem. And I can tell they're really upset about it. What I will say to them is, okay, this is my problem now. I'm going to handle this. I'm going to be consulting with you on this and keeping you up to date, but I want you to stop worrying about it. I've got this from here. And that's kind of the relationship you want to have with the vendors that you're hiring, that they should be doing their job. And if you get that right dream team in place, it's going to really help you from not getting burned out. It's going to help you make it a more enjoyable experience being on the board. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how to get people recruited for the board. So let's say that you're thinking about stepping down from the board, but you're worried that, hey, we don't have anybody who's willing to serve. So a couple things to think about. Some effective strategies. The first strategy I can think of is who's coming to your meetings. Are there people that are interested in coming to your meetings? And would they be good candidates to serve on the board? Are they reasonable? Do they understand issues? Do they have the time to help? And so if they're coming to your meeting, that's probably a good sign. And that may be somebody that you want to reach out to and say, hey, would you be interested in running for the board? Another great place to look would be committees. If you have people currently serving on committees and they are doing a good job and they're interested in the community, that would be a good crossover to recruit them to be on the board. Another thing that you can do is ask board members or ask other community members, hey, do you know anybody who might be good to serve on the board? But really, the people that are contacting the association, coming to the meetings, those are the ones that are going to be interested and probably the best people. Another thing that you can do is be upfront with people about the time commitment. So send out a letter to the membership and say, hey, we don't have anybody to serve on the board. We need 2 people to serve on the board, and here's what the time commitment is. It's 1 meeting a month, and we don't meet in December, and maybe we don't meet in July because everybody's traveling. And explain this is the time commitment, and that we will allow you to appear virtually if you live part of the year in Wisconsin or Minnesota. And address common concerns that they may have up front. A very common concern that I hear from people that are thinking about running for the board is, hey, can I be personally liable for something that happens on the board? Like, can I be sued? And the answer is really anybody can be sued, right? But you have indemnification under your documents and under state law, which means that you cannot be held personally liable for your actions unless you do something like steal money from the association, embezzle money from the association. Then there likely is not going to be coverage, under the association's insurance policy or by the association. But in most circumstances, 99.99999%, you're not going to have any personal liability for decisions that you're making while you're serving on the board, as long as you're, adhering to your fiduciary responsibilities and making good decisions on behalf of the corporation. Okay, so if you're in a really bad place where you cannot get anyone to serve on the board after doing all of these suggestions that we've talked about here, I have a one final last ditch effort that works pretty much every time. And that would be to have our firm or another law firm send a letter to the membership which talks about the fact that we don't have board members, or we have nobody to serve on the board, or we don't have enough people to have a quorum. And, basically talk about the consequences of that. If we don't have a quorum of board members, or we don't have a board at all, the likely outcome that's going to happen is that this board and this association is going to be turned over for a receiver to run the affairs. And the receiver is appointed by the court. Somebody petitions the court to have a receiver appointed. The judge will hire a receiver that is typical of coming in and helping businesses that can't manage their finances. And there'll be a large special assessment to pay for the receiver. And so if we don't want that to happen, because obviously that's going to cost more for everybody in terms of there's going to be a special assessment on this. And in terms of this isn't good for our property values, if we're under a receivership control, it's not going to be good if we want to sell our house. Usually when I send out that letter, within a day, sometimes less than a day, we get somebody right away who's willing to serve on the board. So keep that in your back pocket as a final tool, that the attorney letter to the entire membership explaining how serious this is and the fact that this could end up in us being in a receivership will, 99% of the time get somebody to volunteer to serve on the board. Actually, there's also a great article that Community Associations Institute put out just recently on their website. It's a blog, and it's called Outrunning Burnout, Getting Happy Takes Introspection. And it's Ungated Community Associations Institute blog. So our office is going to be sharing that with you. So you can take a look at that too if you're experiencing burnout. This is a common problem, and you need to hear it from me that everybody who's serving on their board at one point or another sits back and thinks, hey, is this worth it? Is this something I want to continue doing? It's a very normal feeling when you're serving on these boards, because it's volunteer, it's unpaid, and there's a lot of hassles that go with it. But on the flip side, there's a lot of benefits in making your community better, getting things done, making where you live nicer, and just making sure that things are operating professionally, so that your property values are maintained. So hopefully those are some good suggestions for you on how to best deal with burnout, and then also how to recruit new board members for your association. Okay, our very last topic that we're going to be discussing, I think, before we go into our question and answer is the Eisenhower Method and how to create goals for your association for 2025. Right now is a great time for your association to write down some goals for your association for 2025. And we have a really helpful cheat sheet on how to accomplish those goals in 2025 that we're going to be sharing with you today. The Eisenhower Method, for some of you who may not be familiar with it, was created, I think, in one of the World Wars by General Eisenhower. He had so many problems coming to his desk that he needed a way to prioritize things to get things done. And so our government, the military, currently uses this, and many Fortune 500 companies use this exact method to handle, serious problems and to create goals to handle problems that your association may have, or problems that they may have in the military or in the government or in private business. And so we're giving you this cheat sheet, and it will help your association. One thing that I would suggest for this year, create 5 goals for your association and prioritize those goals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then back them out using this cheat sheet. And kind of the benefit of this cheat sheet is it helps you determine what are the most important things that we have facing our association right now. What are some things that we really need to accomplish or do this year? And maybe you've got 12 things on that list, right? And basically what we do is you look at the things on the list and you determine whether they're urgent or important. And we come up with a grid that shows, is this important but not urgent? Is it urgent but not important? That's where we get stuck a lot of the time in running the board, where we've got people that are coming to the meeting upset about something, but it might not be as, it's urgent because they want a quick response, but it might not be something that is, truly important, versus like something like we've got a fire in, the clubhouse. That's going to be important and urgent, and so basically what we do is we put on the grid, we take the different things that we want to accomplish this year. Maybe there's 15 or 20 or 12 or 10 or whatever. And we map them on the grid in terms of, are they important and urgent? Are they important but not urgent? Are they not important but urgent? Are they not important and not urgent? Which unfortunately, a lot of the times we get stuck in not important and not urgent. And that's why we can't get our business done as an association. We also get stuck in not important, but it's urgent because it's somebody else's timeline. They want an answer, whatever. A difficult owner sometimes, create a lot of issues that way. And so really where we want to stay focused in 2025, after we, put these on the grid, we want to stay focused, really hyper-focused on important and urgent matters. And those should be our top 5 goals for 2025. And so use this cheat sheet. It gives you, it's a step-by-step process of listing the different problems that you have or goals that you may have for this year. And then you graph them, and then you come up with your top 5 goals for this year. So good luck to everybody as you navigate your goals for 2025. A suggestion that I have that we use in our association is every month we revisit the goals at our board meeting. And so it's just part of our board packet after you create them. And we talk about, where are we on this goal? Where are we on redoing the clubhouse? Where are we on, getting the pool decking repaired or fixed or redone at the pool? And, each month, if you're faced at looking at it and, keeping the manager accountable and coming up with a plan, throughout the year to get things done, you won't be like November looking at this list thinking, oh, we didn't get any of it done. We've been looking at it every month and moving it along every month to get to the final goal of having it accomplished in 2025. Okay, that's it for today. We had a great session today. Thank you so much for being here today. This is a busy week for us. We have a lot of different classes we're teaching this week. So today, of course, we had our virtual neighborhood services, HOA Academy. We have 2 more in-person classes this week, one tomorrow in Scottsdale, which I will be teaching in person tomorrow on Wednesday, January 22nd from 1 to 3 at the Mustang Library. We're going to be talking about rentals, ADUs, Corporate Transparency Act again, navigating 2025. So if you're interested in attending, please be sure to register via our website at mulcahylawfirm.com. And then if you're in the Sun City neighborhood, on Thursday at 10 a.m., we are teaching a class for the 2025 Condominium Owners Association annual meeting. And we're also going to be talking about hot topics for Arizona HOAs and condos. And registration is not required, but attendance is limited to members of the Condo Owners Association member associations out in Sun City. If you would like more information on that, go to our website at mulcahylawfirm.com, or please contact the Condo Owners Association of Sun City or visit their website. Okay, thanks everybody for being here today. Amazing to see all of you. I hope you have a very successful 2025. Please know that we are here to help you in any way as you're navigating your legal problems in 2025. And be sure to continue to come to our seminars, webinars, and virtual classes in 2025. We have a lot of really great topics planned. And as always, we answer questions for free at the end of every class. So we will hopefully see you at some of our classes this month. If not, our next virtual class will be our first Fridays, the first Friday in February. So take care, everybody. Have a great week, and thank you for joining us today. Take care. Bye.